All right, welcome everybody in West Warren. I'm here with Greg Stanley, and today's topic is crucial, in terms of the environment we're in, is training. You got all these new people that you've hired. A lot of them actually are new to dentistry, and it's led offices down a path of intensive training. And I've seen it, we've seen it, done many different ways, many different strategies. There are pros to cons to all of them, and there's quite a few that just plain don't work. And that's what we're going to cover today, is stuff that works and stuff to avoid. Greg, over the years you've seen a lot of things. What are some of the things that stand out to you that sounded good on paper and doctors really gravitate towards in terms of training that didn't didn't plain work?
Well, good question. First of all, Wes, we've seen two things that are really new. And how long have you been in dentistry?
20 years, 20
20 or
yeah.
21 years. I've been in dentistry 45 years. So we're seeing some things that are just absolutely shockingly new. Okay, the pandemic brought us, at first it looked like it was going to be okay. We're still going to hang on. We're going to do some emergency work. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to lower our overhead. Some staff quit. We're all good. Well, as it turned out, the pandemic finally lifted. Staff all decided they wanted to work from home, which there's not a lot of work in dentistry that involves work from home.
Right.
And so as we lost all these people, and I mean, we lost the wrong people. In the old days, when we'd lose people, we'd lose the right people, people that had problems. This time, the core knowledge of the practice and the culture literally walked out the door. And as doctors try to restore it, they're floundering. And what's happening is everything's falling back on them, or bigger practices where leadership was established. It's falling, the leaders are having to go back into the trenches, put on a helmet, pick up a rifle, and fight the daily battle. And so we've lost leadership, we've lost core knowledge about dentistry, we've lost culture, and doctors are just wondering, it's like being adrift at sea at night. It's completely dark, you don't even know which way to swim. We're going to cover some things we've learned to put this thing back together. First of all, there's things that just don't work. What have you learned, Wes?
Yeah, so things that don't work. So one of the things that really stands out in my mind is like a full-on operations manual, like a thick, binder. We've had offices like group practices, where they take pictures of everything. Everything is labeled, color-coded, the manual and everything. And just didn't work. I mean, it just literally, it was such a colossal waste of time for most practices that I've encountered. Maybe some have figured this out, but I've never seen it really pay off. The amount of effort they put into that thing, it just can't get into that person's head is the problem. That's a failure. The other thing that I also see a lot of is the video of all the procedures where the doctor goes around and videos everything, and they create like little courses about how things should operate. Marginally successful. Definitely not on the list of things that I would set out and try to do, even though it seems logical. Let's write everything down. Let's make it super detailed. Let's even video it. It all sounds good, but in the end, I think one of the major problems in dentistry is there's no time to sit down and actually learn it. To actually learn that information, you'd have to have an employee offline for 6 weeks, just studying, taking tests, and learning the information. It's quite dense, obviously, and every practice is so different how things operate. You just can't afford to have somebody offline for that long learning the information. So those are the things people tend to gravitate towards as far as training and bringing somebody up to speed. I just haven't seen it work.
Yeah, the issue is we can't have them offline and on the payroll.
Yeah, right.
How many people can do that? There's an episode in Better Call Saul where Jimmy McGill shows up with a law degree from the Law School of American Samoa. And of course, he passes the bar, by the way. And what are the odds of that? In fact, it was such a shock, nobody took him seriously. That's about what it's like in dentistry. Give somebody a wall of law books and say, learn these and pass the bar. Well, maybe Jimmy McGill will do it on television, but your staff probably aren't going to do it in the office. We've learned that staff tend to learn by watching, and if they don't work out. It's a bad fit. So that's something that didn't work. We had an office that actually created over 1,000-page manual. It fit in 2 big binders. I think it was 1,100 pages. And they had videos in little pockets, and they had all the detail that they put into this was mind-boggling. Yet they could never find a person who was interested enough in a wage-paying job to dig in and learn the material. Not one. They finally put it back on the shelf and moved forward, which is all you can do. Can I tell you some things we've learned at Whitehall? Having groups in Zoom is only effective, and then partially, if the doctor is present. If the doctor is sitting, seeing the value of what's being transferred through Zoom, and is kind of nodding his or her assent, yeah, that's good stuff. Y'all, hey, got to learn this. Whether he says that or just kind of the body language communicates it. When staff are sitting there, we're lucky if they're not all reading their telephones, texting, even though the value of what we shared was gold. The doctor would have done a backflip for the value of the material being shared, because to him or to her, it meant an organized office. It meant culture. It meant the power of the team. It meant all this stuff. To them, it was just boring, and it doesn't change my life. Occasionally, we'll get a leader that kind of rises up out of the group and kind of finds some value in what's being shared. But we've learned that training staff through Zoom, number one, can be incredibly effective one-on-one. And number two, because we don't have to spend a day on an airplane, 2 nights in a hotel, and take a lot of time with your staff away from patients, because we can do that super effectively, we have found a superior way forward. This is how training will be done, not because it's fuel efficient or green, or we're not burning up plane miles or whatever, but because it's more effective. Get Wes and Dr. Peterson and I with a staff person one-on-one.
Why do you think it's more effective one-on-one? What have you learned there?
We're starting now by asking how they're feeling about what's going on in the practice. And you would think, Wes, you would think that a person new to dentistry or new to this office wouldn't have anything to say. That's completely false. They have a battery of things to say that really are valuable. It's gold.
Do you think that translates in the office? Meaning, if you were a doctor or a team leader trying to train a couple, 2 or 3 people, that it's going to be far less effective trying to do it as a group versus one-on-one?
I do, and I do feel like it's less effective, and let me explain why. The feeling of this job is boring. I don't like sitting in these meetings. Nobody's listening to me. That's all it takes. That's enough on the I'm out of here meter for them to blow out and take a different job. They all have this BS meter, and they go, this is baloney. And all you got to do is put them in a room and bore them, and that meter spikes. They're gone. And so we have just endless turnover with no roots of core knowledge or culture growing in our practice. it's just it's a write-off. We're having doctors that they just keep hitting the reset button and nothing's resetting because the staff will leave quicker than the longtime staff were with him and left. Man, they just blow out in a heartbeat.
Some things I've learned about this is, one, you have to assign a trainer that is responsible for bringing somebody up to speed. So this goes back to this one-on-one thing you're talking about. You assign somebody directly. Your job is to train this person up. And when this person is fully trained, there's even a bonus, $500 when they're fully trained. It might take 3 months or 4 months of work to get somebody fully up to speed and checked off in certain areas. But you have to assign somebody directly and have them responsible for bringing somebody up to speed. The other thing that I always found interesting in the corporate world, certainly in the DSO space, this knowledge gets passed around, and I think it's pretty valid. They say that only 10% of learning is actually in the book, like learning a book or watching, some boring video or something. Only 10%. Between 20 and 30% of learning is watching somebody do the activity. And then of course, 60 to 70% is you doing it yourself. And it's I guess it'd be no different like when you were learning how to drive a car, or if you've driven a motorcycle or something, learning something like that. You can read the manual, you can watch some videos on it, you can watch somebody do it, but until you get behind the wheel yourself, you don't really get the full learning impact. It's also similar in learning a new city. If you move to a new city, until you're the one actually driving, you don't actually ever learn the city if you're sitting passenger seat. It's very similar. You got to get these people engaged. You've got to get them to watch and then do. We'll see this in areas of the practice. It's pretty common, obviously, as an assistant to do this. They should sit there, watch, and then they should switch places, meaning the experienced assistant sits and watches the new assistant do their job. But that should be done in other departments like treatment coordination. They should switch roles, and where the main treatment coordinator just sits in there in the room and sits and watches the process.
You see it all the time, Wes. You see it all the time outside of dentistry.
Yeah.
There's a trainer and there's a person sitting there fumbling with the cash register.
Yep.
No, there's something you said, Wes. You talked about following a schedule. We have a training schedule. All you have to do is contact us and we'll send it to you. I think it's a 13 weeks training schedule
for each department. Yeah,
to build core knowledge and culture in a dental office. And you're welcome to it. Putting that into place is going to be effective if you do as Wes said, you have a trainer. I got to tell you something we're concerned about now with our one-on-one training versus group training. And that is, number one, that the person listening to this stays with the practice if that's what the doctor wants. Number one. So when we're training, we're trying to make them feel understood and valued. We're doing all we can with this and we're getting results. People are saying, yeah, I can learn this. Gosh, yeah, thanks for taking the time with me. In other words, the more one-on-one, the more considerate we are. Yeah, there was a time when dental jobs were so hard to find, people would say, oh, read an 1,100-page manual, whatever you want me to do. I want in, I'll pay $40,000 for a dental assistant course, whatever. Not anymore. We're losing hygienists, for goodness sakes, who want to find a job they can stay home and hold their kid on their lap and do work through their computer. So number one, when we're doing training, we want people to stay in the practice. We don't actually say that, but we communicate it with all of our verbiage and all of our plan. Number two, we want to push them forward at the pace they feel good about. And that's kind of where the market is. If you don't like that, if you say, oh man, you got to ram these people in there and bring them up to speed in 2 weeks. We actually were doing that at one time. doctor in Atlanta was famous for this. He could get these people doing a whole bunch of procedures in 4 weeks. He was famous for it. That's probably going to take a bit longer now.
That's something that I've learned about this whole process, is especially assistants, is the concept of what's called sports performance anxiety. This is where you learn a skill and you get good at it, but for some reason you get super nervous about making a mistake. And all of a sudden you start making dumb errors that you normally wouldn't if the pressure was off. We see it in sports all the time, and it actually is something that's very easy to correct. Like if you go to psychologists, this is literally what they work on with athletes, so that they can execute what's considered something that's routine. You've heard of the shanks in golf, where a golfer gets the shanks. Well, in baseball, we used to get that just throwing the ball back to the pitcher. You would get the shanks, you throw it in the dirt, and just a simple thing that you know how to do, but you get a little nervous and you just can't execute it. This happens chairside all the time. People that would normally work out get nervous around the doctor and they start making dumb errors. The brain freezes up, and there's nothing wrong with this person, but you have to be conscious of it as the doctor, that you have to bring these people on a little slower and really make sure that you don't make them nervous, make them scared, make them feel like it's okay to make errors. You're here to learn. You'll pick it up. We'll teach you. We'll take our time. You've got to have that air about you, or else you'll literally recreate this problem when it shouldn't be. So really be careful about this, especially in today's environment with these a lot of new assistants out there right now.
So these new, easily intimidated staff,
Yeah.
Get with a doctor that's intimidating. He's really confident, he's been at it a long time, and maybe he's a bit of an outspoken, direct individual, which is very valued with patients, but a bit terrifying to a new, non-assertive staff person.
I even see it, where the doctor tells me what they said. People quit, they go cry, all the doctors listening, they've seen this, their team members go cry and stuff. And I hear what they say. It's not so bad, but it's, for whatever reason, because they're the owner doctor or just a doctor, the team members just devastated over just the most minute comments, really. So you really have to be careful about this, especially as you bring somebody up to speed.
Wes, also, I think through all of this, the pandemic has exposed the nation to something. I can't describe it as well as I would like to. I don't know if it's a new generation or if it's how people learn to see life during the pandemic or what it is, but people don't seem willing to put up with high-handed oversight, training, management, all of that. They just seem less tolerant for that. So what we're sounding here is an alarm, meaning if some of you are thinking, all I have to do is outlast this situation, well, it may be a whole generation.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, I think you're dealing with a whole new generation. As many of you know, it's totally different. The game has changed. So what we're saying is you have to assign a trainer. You have to incentivize them. You have to have them be accountable to bring this person up to speed. Get our checklist so that you have some frame of reference to work off of, like they're checked off on this, and this. They know this, they know that, so that you can monitor their progress from afar. You can look at the checklist and see how they're doing. Create some kind of bonus to bring somebody up to speed, depending on the position, and really understand that they got to watch, but then they need to flip-flop, and you can't just have the experienced person leave the room. That's a big mistake. The experienced person, their trainer, needs to be there in the room watching them, and so that they know how to coach them up after. So
excellent.
Yeah,
it's a new day. I
Yep.
believe Whitehall's ready for it. I think you're mentally ready for it. Let's make this happen.
All right. Thanks for listening.